Hi, good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to Matters of Public Importance, right here on Channel 6. I'm yours, Gail Teixeira, Chief Whip for the Parliamentary Opposition, representing the People's Progressive Civic Members of Parliament and the People's Progressive Party. On this program, we shall focus on matters of public importance, bringing you information and discussion on issues and matters that are important to you, the Guyanese people, every Thursday between 12:30 and 1:30, right here on Channel 6. And last week, I know that you had Bishop Edgehill ran the program for me, and I really appreciate him standing in for me. And I heard that it was a very good program, and there were lots of calls. So, thank you. And thanks to Bishop Edgehill. I was in the interior, and so I couldn't be here with you, and I apologize. And as usual, before we get into the meat of the program, let me remind you of the numbers for the call-in part of the program. 225-0010 and 225-0008. And I always remind you about the Office of the Leader of the Opposition being open, 304 Church Street between New Garden and Peter Rose Streets, right opposite Border Cricket Ground. And the office is open Monday to Saturday and Monday to Friday from 9 o'clock to about 5:30, and then on Saturdays from 9:30 to about 1:30. And we're open, our doors are open to you, the public, to come in and raise issues, concerns, get guidance, or just want to say hello. It's no problem, you're all welcome. And of course, the number, if you wish to make an appointment or you wish to speak to anybody, it is 225-3432. We're there to serve you, and whether you voted for APNU, AFC, or anybody else, you're welcome. We're there to represent, we're the elected representatives to represent the people of Guyana. And some of you, as I always remind you, may be familiar with Freedom Radio, which is broadcast FM 91.1 for Demerara, 90.5 for Berbice, and 90.7 for Essequibo. Well, in the 27 months of the APNU AFC government, we have discovered 52 scandals. And these I announced on this program in August 2017, the anniversary of the August 2016 announcement, when I had found 16. So in a year and more, we have more than doubled the number of scandals that we've discovered. So we had 16 in August 2016 that we were able to chronicle. By August 27, we were 52. And by the way, remember I said on that program, and I've said on several programs since, that more scandals are in the making, mark my words. Well, that is so. You don't have to dig deep, you know. This is not deep throat investigations. This is all things that are coming up because you can't hide anything for too long in Guyana. So the scandals continue unabated. And the government believes that they can get away with a lack of transparency and accountability and downright nepotism and corruption with taxpayers' money. In the months since I announced that the number had climbed to 52, we are seeing number 53, 54, and 55 scandal emerging. Can you believe this? Well, the 53rd one was when I had related to the program I had on September 7th, where we discussed the GPL, the terrible blackouts, and that we're all experiencing every single day, sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a day, and for long hours, and other times like fairy lights. So we discussed the GPL and what's going on, and the Power Producers Distribution, Inc., which the government created and got rid of Wärtsilä and replaced it with a state-owned company to supposedly take over the Wärtsilä management of the generation sets. And I exposed a number of things in that program. Of course, what became clear as we investigated, and I reported to you on this program, that PPDI, which was supposed to replace Wärtsilä and save the country money and save GPL money and hopefully save us the taxpayers money and give us a better service, in fact has turned out to be a total crock, because PPDI is only doing producing electricity from 4 generation sets: Kingston, New Kingston, Freedom Hoop, and the fourth one I'll now forget, of course. I just had it here in front of me. Sorry about that. Yeah, Freedom Hoop and Garden of Eden power plants. I should remember that one. So those are the 4. And in fact, this is less than the power plants that Wärtsilä was running. So they're saying to us, well, we're doing it at a cheaper price because we've taken over Wärtsilä. In fact, that's not true. Wärtsilä was running many more power generation plants than what PPDI is. And in fact, they said that they would be saving 2-point-something million US dollars for GPL by switching to PPDI. In fact, what it has turned out that PPDI will cost us more to run less generation sets than what Wärtsilä did. And of course, we are the ones who are punishing because the reliability of electricity has gone down markedly since Wärtsilä was removed and PPDI came in. And of course, we had a long discussion on that. And the real solution, one of the major solutions to our energy sector, particularly the electricity sector, is the Amaila Falls hydroelectric project. And so you remember this was part of the low carbon development strategy to move us off of fossil fuels and to go into hydro. Solar and light can be used, but they cannot generate and sustain at the same rate as hydro. And so these are different kind of models, and they can be used together in a variety of ways in different parts of the country. And that's why we put up individual household solar panels in 13,000 households in the far interior, so that each one could have some electricity, because it will take us ages to be able to connect all those households that are sometimes miles apart from each other. The villages are different than what is constructed on the coastal belt. And so Amaila was going to be the one that would have produced a major portion of our electricity needs and come into the national grid. Of course, the APNU and AFC in opposition tore it to shreds, opposed it, didn't allow us to have the budgetary support and the unanimous support which would have allowed the investors to proceed. And so Amaila was put on the side. Well, clearly the government does not wish to still deal with Amaila, even though the Norwegian Guyana government memorandum of understanding included 80 million US dollars, which we already earned and is being held for us, towards Amaila. So this is money we earned from selling our carbon services to the world. And we're one of the big carbon traders in the world, or were, I should put. And so we earned 250 million US dollars over a 5-year period from the Norwegian Guyana government agreement. Part of that, as I said, was Amaila, and 80 million US dollars was set aside for that as Guyana's path to alternative energy and moving away from fossil fuels. The government has panned that, and part of the Norwegian concern led to a Norwegian independent company coming in and doing a study of the Amaila and other aspects to do with alternative energy. The recommendation of that body was that Amaila is the one that's most ready, will produce the largest amount of hydro at this stage, and because some infrastructure works has already started, this is the one that can be gone into quickest, immediately, and start implementation. Of course, the government does not wish to go in that line, and they're talking about resuscitating the National Service hydropower small plant at Tumatumari, etc. So without Amaila, we're still stuck with fossil fuels. And because of the oil find that is going on in here, the government seems to have thrown aside completely the issue of alternative energy, although Guyana has signed the COP21 in Paris, which commits Guyana, as in many other countries, by 2025, 2030, to be not dependent anymore on fossil fuels. So how are we going to do that if we don't have an alternative energy model? And so we're limping along, PPDI and GPL, in which GPL is showing more profits because they're saying of the timely payment by the taxpayers, and of course we're paying more for the service, plus VAT, plus blackouts that are destroying our homes and frustrating all of us in the workplace, in businesses, in factories, in hospitals and health centers, as well as in our homes. So the number 53 scandal, PPDI and GPL. And therefore it is time that we start calling for the bringing back in Wärtsilä, which was costing us about 7.5 million US dollars a year for running almost 20 power generation sets across the country, to what is going to cost us 10 million US a year under PPDI to run 4 generation sets. So number 53 coming up smartly, And we, of course, in Guyana are the ones that are punishing. And then, of course, you remember that we had the number 54 coming up again, Ministry of Health. We have had, of course, in the 52, several scandals to do with the Ministry of Health, crossing two different ministers. And one had to do, of course, with the drug bond in Sussex Street, which, by the way, is still being paid monthly by the government, although the contract should have been thrown out and certain people should have been locked up. So the drug bond continues, their contract continues, they continue being paid, and that was in the 52. The other thing in the 52 was the purchase of $605 million worth of drugs by the Ministry of Public Health from Ansa McCall without going to public tender, without any tender procedure. And despite after our questioning in Parliament, the NPTAB, the National Procurement and Tender Administration, had to admit that they were asked by the Ministry of Health to waiver all procurement procedures to allow them to single source from Ansa McCall. And the NPTAB said no. Despite that, the Ministry of Health went ahead, proceeded to order and pay Ansa McCall. We have raised this in Parliament again when we go back in recess, because this is now a criminal action, and obviously one that should lead to some major shake-up in the Ministry of Public Health. However, you remember that the PPC, the Public Procurement Commission, was called in to investigate. So was the Georgetown Public Hospital Board. The Georgetown Public Hospital Board was removed, and so was the Chief Executive Officer. A new Chief Executive Officer was put in, former Chief of Staff of the Army, of the GDF, Brigadier Ross, and they put in an entirely new board, which then investigated the whole purchase of the goods from Ansa McCall, and we don't know the results, except nothing has happened. And then PPC went and had an investigation of it, and that is supposed to be laid in Parliament. And the main person who did the investigation in the PPC, he had a minority report, because apparently he disagreed, and he has a right to put in a minority report on an investigation, and they didn't allow it. So interesting in waiting for those. But clearly the PPC has called for no disciplinary action with regards to this complete violation of the procurement laws of our country. But if that's not enough, so that's 1, 2, 3. I've given you 3 examples under the 52 scandals. Now we have scandal 54, again Ministry of Public Health, which is that they've gone out to buy more pharmaceuticals and medical supplies on an emergency basis from Ansa McCall. This time, the value of it is $515 million. So that, again, this appears not to have gone through a tender procedure. We don't know this time if the National Procurement and Administration approved a waiver, but there was no public tendering of this either. What further compounds the issue and the corruption in this is that the Ministry of Public Health has, in the total budget with Georgetown Public Hospital, has utilized by July this year, by May this year, almost all of the budget for the procurement of drugs and medical supplies. And only 30% of that was done through public tendering. So you're talking about $2 to $3 billion, of which only 30% has been used in public tender, and the rest has been selective tenders and calling in people and making deals with them. And as a former Minister of Health, I know this is something you cannot allow. We had standing arrangements with PAHO, with the World Health Organization, with UNICEF to buy from them directly, and the World Health Organization International Dispensary Agency, which gives you essential drugs mainly at 1/3 the price of what you're paying. So again, just like electricity, we, the Guyanese taxpayers, are putting in more money into the public health sector. More money is being spent on drugs in a very higgly-piggly fashion. And go into any part of Guyana, go into the interior, and you'll find that there are great shortages of essential drugs and items in every health center, in every hospital throughout the country. So where are all these drugs going? Are they actually coming in? Are we paying for these drugs and they're there sitting there and they're not being distributed? Or are we paying for them and they're not coming in and someone else is benefiting, or they're allowing all sorts of craziness in the public procurement sector for the Ministry of Public Health? Meantime, people are suffering. People have to be going to buy a lot of things privately. And of course, on top of all this, they're paying for VAT because only a few items, specific items, are not VATable under medicine. And now we have number 54, brewing, which is the health insurance arrangement with Asuria for the ministers, cabinet members, and ministers to be able to access health care in different parts of the world, in which after much tooth pulling, they then admitted that they had the ministers will pay part and the government will pay part. This will cost, this arrangement for a 5-year health insurance for ministers will cost $190 million over the period between now and elections. And so, but the other problem of this is that the procurement, the government did not go out to any public tendering process to invite the insurance companies in this country or even overseas to bid for medical plans and medical health insurance for the ministers, President, Prime Minister, and ministers. Because remember, not all ministers are in cabinet, so you have ministers and junior ministers. I'm talking about the whole caboodle, 28 of them, and their families and their spouses, by the way. So that this one is a brewing 55, right? 55. We are not begrudging ministers and the President and Prime Minister to be able to have health care, particularly if it's not available here. And I'll remind you too, when they got into office, they brought in the amendment to the former president's benefits, which cut the former president's medical benefits to, well, the original act said that the government and the people were responsible if their former presidents were ill to take care of them. It would be unthinkable to deny a president medical care. However, under this bill that they passed in 2015 and was signed by President Granger, it had cut all the former president's medical bills to $200,000 per annum Guyana dollars for themselves, their wives or spouses, and children under the age of 18, and that were they to, and this money had to be spent in Guyana. So that if they were dared to go outside of Guyana to look for medical attention, and it was available in Guyana, they could not get the $200,000 a year for their medical support. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? I know, as a minister of the PPC government and as a minister of health, the assistance that was given to former President Hoyt, former President Chung, Mrs. Chung, former President Janet Jagan, and when she was president, Dr. Chetty Jagan as president, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Hoyt, leader of opposition, Mr. Corbyn, members of parliament on the opposition side in the PNC and the AFC, as well as, of course, ministers of the PPC government. It was an immoral thing in our minds to deny what was medical attention that people genuinely needed to save their lives and to improve the quality of their lives. So now ministers will be jetting off because, of course, we know what the public health sector is. So this is not as if you are going overseas because the services are not available in Guyana. The health insurance allows you to go wherever you're covered to get that medical insurance, whether it is available in Guyana or not. And so, as I said, that's number 55 coming up. Number 56. And this is just in, between August 18th, when I gave you 52, and today, September 21st. And now the biggie one. The new Demerara Harbour Bridge. And so I'm sure you've been seeing in the press a number of things. Well, I wrote the Public Procurement Commission, the chairperson, Madam Corbyn, pointing out and calling for an investigation under the Procurement Act and the Constitution with regards to the selection, the whole bid process for the consultancy of the feasibility study on the new Demerara River Bridge or river crossing. So I'm calling for an investigation into the bid process, the selection, and the awarding of the contract to a company, a Dutch company called Livensko, that got the feasibility study. And why am I saying that? There can be no evidence found that the bids that were announced in the press of 22 companies were ever dealt with by the NPTAB. There is no evidence that this company ever tendered for this contract. The quantum of money that was issued to the feasibility study only became known by one of the press people saying it. It was never publicly stated by the government. And that the was supposed to look at three venues, 3 sites for the Demerara Harbour Bridge. When we were in government, Prime Minister Sam Hinds had a feasibility study which was publicly advertised, tender awarded. The feasibility study of 2013 pointed out there were 3 possible sites for the bridge. One is the present site, to put a bridge exactly where it is now, but a new, modern, better bridge. The second one was at Houston, Versailles, and the third one was further up around Caledonia. So these were the 3 sites. And that's a pre-feasibility study that was done in 2013. So when Minister Patterson says, oh, we had approved Houston, Versailles, it's not true. We had had a feasibility study, 2013, 2014, and then, of course, you know what happened. Parliament was prorogued, we went into elections in 2015. And so that issue was never concluded, which choice you're going to have. So the government goes for feasibility studies, supposedly to use these 3 sites. Somehow the company only looks at one site. That's Versailles, Houston. Now, for all of those who live in the Versailles area and know from the maps and everything, some of which have been publicized, that the land that is available and the land that's being proposed to be used to bring the bridge from the West Bank area to East Bank area is land that is privately owned by Stanley Ming, an executive member of the PNC and the PNCR at one time. So he's in the making for quite a lot of money. Then you have this site at Houston. Now, here you have a government that is making big thrift of the oil agreement with Exxon, which, by the way, we haven't seen. The contract has not been made public, although everybody's been screaming for this for the last 6 months. Okay. Having made this big thrust, oil is the solution to our problems as a developing country, a number of investors got together and acquired land at Houston where to put in wharf and other facilities with foreign companies that offer offshore services to Exxon and maybe other oil companies as well. So Munishwar and a number of offshore companies have created and invested millions and millions of US dollars to set up this site. And it is, you pass it, there's activity, and it is being set up. But a major investment and employment of people. Guess what? That's the site where the bridge has to go. So what do? Why would they try to ruin what is a major investment to give support to the oil company, which for them is the godsend to Guyana? And in addition to that, look at where it's located. That's one of the very congested areas. In fact, for me as a simple person who doesn't know all the engineering issues, a bridge alongside the present location would be the easiest and simplest and probably the cheapest, because you already have road links that lead to that. It just would be a mild deviation. So why would you put it in a completely new location, have to buy out properties, buy out people's houses, and that here you have no space, basically, to put in the kind of road links and the the lead up to the bridge that is required on both sides of the road. There's been no social or economic impact done, no environmental assessment impact done on this bridge, and yet, lo and behold, this government has decided. The feasibility study, the company stated in the media, in March this year that they'd handed over their report to the government, to Minister Patterson. But 2 weeks before that, the press reported that Minister Patterson had made a presentation to the cabinet on the feasibility study. So I don't know how he got it before they handed it over, but those are questions that will be answered later. However, having made it public in August that there was this feasibility study and Houston Versailles is the site for the bridge, the government then is now going on a fast track. So that was sometime in August, I think the 17th. On August the 21st, the government puts out on their Ministry of Public Infrastructure website the pre-qualification for contractors for the design, build, and maintain of the new Demerara River Bridge at Houston Versailles. So within a few days of it, they're saying that this is what the feasibility study is saying, and before anybody's seen what the feasibility study is saying, they have gone now, they already have the contract out, it's advertised. And guess what? That was August 21st. By September the 4th, which is gone, of course, 2017, the companies had to put in expressions of interest by letter to the National Procurement and Tender Administration. So companies, international, because a bridge like that probably has to have an international company pairing with local partners, etc., that within a matter of less than 10 days, these companies had to put in letters of expression. And by October the 17th, then they have to put in all their proposals, costs, etc., etc. However, we have noted that the government has decided that they will do pre-qualification. So if you're not accepted in the first phase, which is the letters of expression and what you have to offer, then it doesn't matter about putting in the bid by October the 17th. So August the 17th, feasibility study is made public. In fact, that there is one, and this is the government's position. It is later on posted on a website after that. And so none of us get to read it. We're now seeing in the press, and those of us who've been able to find it on the website, on the Ministry of Public Infrastructure website, that this is a feasibility study. But August 17th, August 21st, the new pre-qualification of contracts are there. And September the 4th, companies had to be scrambling to get in their letters of expression. And then October 17th. But worse than that is that the companies are being asked to agree to a non-disclosure clause, so they cannot say they're being, muzzled from saying whether they bid or not, what was their bid, etc., etc. Now, the procurement laws of this country say that these things have to be public. The opening of bids in this country is a public exercise. We're one of the few countries, I think the only country, in the whole of the CARICOM that publicly opens bids. So you go to the National Procurement and Tender Administration, all the bidders are there, the press is supposed to be there, the administration people, and every bid is opened, the name of the company is called, there's a check on whether they have the required NIS and income tax and so on, and the bid quantity is announced. And everybody sits and takes records, including the other companies who bid. This is the law of Guyana. And yet the government is trying to tell bidders in this pre-qualification that they cannot, there's a non-disclosure clause. That's not the law. And so we have undermining all the time. So my letter to Mrs. Corbyn, the chairwoman of the Public Procurement Commission, is asking for a full investigation into what was the bidding process? Where are all the records of the companies that bid? And why was it that the minutes of the tender board does not show these records? And this company that got the consultancy for the feasibility study, which is now their study, is the basis of the pre-qualification for the design, build, and maintain of the new Demerara Bridge. And in that feasibility study, Mr. Jagger has been talking a lot about this week, is that, can you imagine, they're recommending that the river vessels that you have to go under the bridge have to pay, proposing a 700% increase in the fees to use the bridge, which is a major concern. If you want to attract investments, you got all the fishermen and everybody who has to pay. Secondly, the increase of fees for the consumers, the travelers, the commuters on the bridge, in this new bridge will be an increase of 250%. And the cost of the bridge is 3 times more than what the Berbice Bridge cost, in terms of, one is 40 odd million, this one is 170 million US dollars, of course. And there's a further complication. By bringing the bridge up, that is up towards the mouth of the river, you have problems in terms of what are international requirements to do with mooring of vessels and distance from the sea and stuff like that, which I'm not very au fait with. So this is number 56, and this one is going to cost us a pretty penny as taxpayers, and it is not a model partnership like we did with Berbice Bridge. This is now where the government will have to put in money, and we will have to pay double, both in terms of the government's investment as well as consumers and using the bridge. But this is highly suspect, highly suspect. And as I said, number 56. So it is 1:10. We have a lot of other issues to talk about, but I know you're going to probably want to call in. But let me open the lines, and so we'll see. And if not, I'll just continue with some of the issues I wanted to raise with you. So we're going to open the lines. Let's see who's going to call in. But we're now at 56 scandal. Can you believe that? In 27 months of these people in government. And we're not anywhere near, well, about a year and a half, 2 years from 2020. But we have more abuse by the government. And so the lines are open, I believe, and therefore we'll be able to take calls from you. But we have a whole range of other issues. I see Mr. Freddie Kissoon calling me a pathological liar, and so is Lincoln Lewis, and it really doesn't bother me. I've been around too long, and I know when I'm speaking the truth. And when I spoke about, and these gentlemen attacked me because I spoke about the local government commission not being appointed. And I proved by facts that the non-appointment of the local government commission was part of a dastardly agenda of the government to appoint all the overseers and the RAOs and the staff in these local authorities, of which the PPP won 52 of 71. And yet, they can do it now through minister's diktat, and the local government commission came out through the constitutional reform. So yes, in 2013, the Local Government Commission Act was passed and assented to, and then you know what 2014 was like. We were fighting on the anti-money laundering and trying to make sure that Guyana was not blacklisted or grey listed. We had also the Amaila Falls that was in jeopardy. We had $90 billion cut from the budget in 2012, 13, and 14. So 2014 was a dreadful year. But the process started in 2015 after the elections. And so Mr. Jagdeo, as leader of the opposition, has fulfilled his requirement. He has named people, 3 people as required. And of course, Minister Bulkan questioned that, and we went back and consulted national stakeholders and came back with the 3 names. But the president hasn't named his 3 people, nor has Minister Bulkan had the consultation as required by law with the local authorities to make sure that their nominee is on the list. And of course, Parliament finished since May last year, appointing the person from the parliamentary committee who is a representative of the local government union in the local government commission. And of course, you know well the non-appointment of GCOM chairman, and we're now on the 3rd list, and it's 3 weeks, and the president still has not made a decision. So I'm sure you're beginning to think of really what is going on this issue. We had, of course, and spoken on this program about the halting of the promotions of members of the Guyana Police Force on the instruction of the president to the Service Commission, and more recently the release of the Commission of Inquiry report to the state media, which is attacking and vilifying members of the leadership of the Guyana Police Force. I have said in this program, probably about 6 weeks ago, that the objective of this commission inquiry was to decapitate the leadership of the Guyana Police Force and install their own officers in violation of the Constitution and the Police Service Commission. So let me take a call that's coming in from out of town. Hello, good afternoon, welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gail Teixeira.
Yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Well, the first issue is, I think, one, if y'all could come together and bring this country a better place. Because it's none time at all that this, if the two y'all don't come together, this country can't come good. Y'all gotta cooperate or something for this country come good. You see, the poor people feeling the pressure. Not the wood at the top, because everybody just filling up with a set life and nothing will going forward. Now, for example, the sugar industry, the estate. The estate now, they close the estate and the Al-Qaeda Island. We can't pay, we can't kill you. Listen, now we can do 5 hours.
We have what?
5 hours.
Uh-huh.
We take in from number 1 and number 2 and light trade. 5 hours we take in to make the ice come back. Yesterday all day we take for 2 children because why? The dam burst down. The train can't get a go. This waste time, this is one mistake they make for close wheels. They don't matter make a decision for close it to a estate, I for sure be the one. Wheels don't have no wheels. They got nobody from garbage to wheels, right? Got a form that 5 person walking. Yeah? Nothing. Right now you drive 2 wheels, it goes there, yeah. Nothing doing.
Yeah.
And I think you have to come together for this country, because if you don't come together, it can't come good. Don't care what. Now they talk about 1 list for election commissioners, 2 lists, 3 lists. The president will not listen to Jagdeo and go nothing with Jagdeo put it. He going to put one of these army men going to go there. I'll tell you something. This country is militarizing and don't care what. Right? They now give y'all a chance to go back in power. Because first thing, y'all say y'all lose elections and America put them there. If y'all lose election and y'all was in power and America put them there, Moses with his eye. They're not going to give y'all the breathing space. This country is a terrible state right now. Nothing doing, people groaning, people crying, nothing good in coming out of this country. And I'm begging y'all gotta come together and do something. This Teixeira is the poor people is crying. It's not the big people in big society and who got it, who got bodyguard, who got driver, who got luxury life. It's the poor people.
Yeah.
And the poor people is the real people, because you got to remember now, the poor people got to do things. The poor people got to do this buying and shopping and these things. And nothing doing, we facing a terrible situation. And let me tell you, it's very, I glad that the man my yard back in power, but it's hard. It's not an easy task. Trust her tell me. Them gun, all about them tactics is back there. So, don't care what, you're not going to get a experience. Them going to rip it right through from left to center. I tell you, because I don't see what's going on. Everything is all people you give him power about. The people don't get him pension, get him power. What about the watch? Say I go to minister. Why do you not donkey? He want to put it in a boat and lose him in Kaiju Fall. He is no good. He is not no agriculture minister. He can't even talk. Skit, one dumb. Them money this can't talk. Yeah, we do Professor John and Thomas and all them men who got strokes for one side. And who walk, their brains can't even think. And then you put in these men for the people, man. No, what you going on? There's nothing going to do it. The agriculture minister, I understand you know you so on Tom Fulton. Nobody will be a big agriculture minister. We need somebody with agriculture minister. You can't even talk properly. One time I go to a meeting of these OC job in sleep. What sense it makes? There's nothing doing. And we need, you can't get agriculture minister like that, Mr. Shearer.
I know. Let me ask you a question.
You see,
Let me ask you a question, Comrade. Wait, let me ask you a question. When you say cooperate, what do you cooperate you're talking about? Cooperate between the government and the PPP or cooperate at some other level? What are you saying?
The two parties, the government and the PPP,
that's what you're saying.
To some level.
So you're saying too that they're not gonna want us to get back into power on our own. That's what you're
No,
saying too.
you know the though, Mr. Shearer. It's not like we know you're stupid.
I
You
know.
just in politics. You were in politics maybe before I buy. I used to fire fight. And you're supposed to get them sense.
I got into politics 40 years ago, so not quite, but almost.
Well, good. But since I know myself and know about politics, you was there.
Yeah.
You understand me?
Yeah.
You understand, you see, you got to remember. The two biggest mistakes you see y'all make, what put y'all in this pressure is two things. First thing, y'all going to pick up somebody to be the Prime Minister candidate who nobody don't even know. This is the biggest mistake y'all make. Second mistake, nobody not respect for Mr. Ramadan. You should have been the one that he put as Prime Minister candidate. Or call you or just, y'all make a big mistake. You can't put people don't know, and this way y'all show yourself right up. Don't that you go and say done with politics, you really rest and this and that. Till after 3 years, then people will back in fight.
Yeah.
So nobody no respect for Ramadan, no disrespect, but Mr. Ramadan is not the person to mambo in this country.
Okay.
Yeah, I make some big mistakes because I gotta know your area.
Yes.
So it's glad for y'all give us a chance to see if y'all gonna be somebody. Because see, in the government they gotta look for everybody. You can't want to be a politician and got race inside.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
I agree.
Right?
Anyway, I can't.
So, anyone
I'd love to talk. I enjoy talking to you, but I know the lines are going, and so they're going to quarrel with me for letting you talk too long.
Sometimes we could take a walk.
Sure.
Stand tongue or like
Sure.
everybody trying to make a fun. We ask the agriculture minister to come because some people want some things, shadows. Some poor people trying to plant. I mean, this weather, they glad for shade. You know, the nature is put like a shadow.
Yeah.
So we're glad people get help from there because nobody coming to give you assistance, not even with a feed.
Yeah.
Yeah? We need the poor people. I know, the poor give me some kind of help, no man. Give me something, give me the plants to be planted or something. No help at all.
Exactly.
Everything has your own. All to make it. You don't know if you're going to collect some money, no bank account or nothing.
Yeah.
So like if you could give back the chance, and let me see you could have more. What you got to do? Please like standing tall and like treat them. You got to come around.
Yeah, well,
do the campaign.
you organize for me to come in, huh?
I know you.
If you can organize for me to come in, I'll come.
Well,
You can reach me at Church Street office.
Well, tell me where I could meet you or come to the office there.
Okay,
and I could come and sit down with you and let you know.
Okay,
what you think.
sounds like a good idea. The office of the Leader Opposition, 304 Church Street, opposite
Yeah.
Border Mall. And I'm there. If not there, you can call 225-3432. Okay?
All right, I would like to get a nice discussion with you.
Yes, I look
And
forward to that.
Because we need to take back this country. I know
Yeah.
that. It's not easy task,
I know.
but we're going to try.
Okay, thank
It's
you
not
very
like a
much.
Try, right? Enjoy your day.
Thank you, you too.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
bye-bye. Hello? Yeah, the gentleman caller, I mean, I gave him a lot of time, but people have to also express themselves, and we only have an hour, and that's always a problem I have of trying to make sure that as many people come in as possible. But sometimes you have to get clarity when you're talking to someone too, about really what are the issues. And so, for example, you know, I've got another caller, so let me take that before. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
A very good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, my dear. Could you talk a bit louder?
I agree with the caller who said that the Chinese people need to come together so that Guyana's interest will be foremost in everybody's mind. If not, I was born on the British Guyana. Probably the British should come back and govern Guyana, because the nonsense that is going on in Guyana, a country with all the natural resources, and we are worse off than the other Caribbean islands. That is my contribution. And blockout, it only starts now. Blockout was going on a long, long time. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have the different views coming in. I'll take one more caller. One person called already is calling back, and I can't give that person a chance a second time. So we want the issue of cooperation. Look, it's used a lot, and obviously it's understood from many people's points of view that if these two major parties could work together, it'd be better for all of Ghana. In theory, yes. But how do you get cooperation? And I pointed out in this program before, we've had 2 entire programs dedicated to this issue of what is called good faith efforts. When there are differences between 2 parties, not only political parties, in a church organization, between man and wife, and so on, you have to have good faith efforts. So when a woman says to her husband that he's misbehaving, and he says, no, I'm not going to do it again, and he goes back and do it again, and then she tries again, and she tries again, and he keeps not. Then after a while, it doesn't work. And so what is called good faith efforts, that these are areas that give you an indication that there's a possibility, an opportunity for working together. So we can't just deal with just wishes. It's how does it work? Not only in politics, I said, even in church organizations, trade unions, when there are differences of views. And the point is that in this country, we have a situation where we have declared our willingness to work with the government on any issue that will better the Guyanese people. That's our record in Parliament since August 2015. And we've said it over and over and over again. But what do we have in response? We're bringing matters to Parliament, they're all defeated. So when we call for the removal of the VAT that was imposed on essential food items, on medical services, agricultural services, on the manufacturers and fisheries and so on, and we call to stop it, to reverse it, and to go back to what was it before that in 2006-2008 Act, which did not put VAT on education and goods and services, did not put VAT on essential food items, etc. They defeated us. When we brought a simple motion on suicide prevention, which had recommendations how we could work together to reduce suicide in this country, it was defeated. When we called on the government that all of us as members of Parliament, publicly declare our income tax filings, what we have declared to GRA for the last 10 years, and make it public to develop public trust between the parliamentarians and the people, and between us as 2 sides of the House. It was defeated. And we could go on and list 100 different things. We have talked about sugar constantly. We are called on December 30th for a meeting on December 31st, 2016 to discuss sugar. And the whole issue was basically a waste of time, and by January 5th it was all over. So that was the level of it. We have said we're willing to discuss issues to do with the budget, but we need to have data. You can't just walk into a budget meeting and say, well, I want this, and I want this, and I want this. That's not how budgets are run. We've been in government. We know this. You need to have statistics. You need to have information on performance, on the revenue of the country, and so on, a debt. And these have been denied to us. So we can talk about cooperation, but it is like a situation where if there's no, look at GCOM. The Constitution is being undermined. We're on the 3rd list of names for the chairman of GCOM. GCOM has not functioned since November last year. It's coming on a year. A court ruled and vindicated our position. And still, the president says, well, the Chief Justice has their interpretation, and he has his interpretation. That's that. So, yes, we can talk about cooperation, and there have been opportunities for that in the past. the 1999 Hertz-Marston Accord, the St. Lucia Accord, which led to constitutional reform in the 1999-2001 example, is a major model and example of when we cooperate. And we were in government. We were in government. Well, there's no such thing now. And you have ethno-political discrimination going on. So where is the good faith? You have the sugar work closing down Wales, sending home 1,700 workers. You heard the man call in. 3 other estates are on the list. 10,000 more workers, and they're losing their jobs. And yet you're saying and proposing in Parliament, you're publicly speaking about what are the options and what could save the industry, and they're just going ahead. Even their own Commission of Inquiry on sugar said, do not close any estate. The circumstances would be catastrophic. Their own Commission Inquiry, they paid $55 million for. They dissed the whole thing, and within a month or 2 of that report went out and announced Wales is being closed, and then after that they announced the 3 estates are being closed. Skeldon is going to be privatized, and the Skeldon Energy Inc. privatized. So I agree and I understand fully the sentiments that cooperation would be the best answer. That some democratic framework that allows a parliamentary opposition that is 4,526 votes less than the government, assuming that the elections are free and fair, and we don't agree with that, but let's assume that. And the government is sitting on less than 1% difference in the votes between the opposition and themselves, and yet is behaving as if they have a majority. They won by a major majority in the 2015 elections. So the problem is not the issue of cooperation. It's the issue of the government feels no need, absolutely no need, to work with anybody. Anybody who puts up proposals, them they diss. And so it's regrettable, but this is an example, as I said, of the way in which the government running this country. It feels it can run it without any of you, without any of us. It just wants to do what it wants to do. And of course, we, the people, will pay for that. So I'm on the last minute, and I'm getting signaled by the technician. This is a major issue that we talk about of cooperation, because this is what the government also tells its own people to say it, because this is the only thing they can try to attack us on, that we're not cooperating. We have been cooperating, and we have been dissed at each time that we have cooperated. So we will continue trying. And we expect. We bring matters to Parliament and they're thrown out. We bring matters to Parliament and they're not allowed by the Speaker. And we know where he's taking his orders from. So, struggle we will. And that is why I said, and I close every meeting with, that struggle we shall, and silent we shall not be. Silence is the greatest enemy of democracy. Silence makes those in power think they can get away with anything. Silence has those who want more control and less democracy, and those who want to move this country to a police state. And in the next elections, the people will make their voices count again, and there will be a change. And we in the PPC government shall have to start all over again, as in the 1992, to reconstruct, to put this economy back on a firm and stable footing, and restore the programs which help the poor and the vulnerable, and those at risk, and restore the independence of the judiciary and legislature from executive interference. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful week coming up, and that we'll meet again next Thursday. And as I always tell you, don't drink and drive. There are too many fatalities. Speeding on the road, people drinking and driving, oh my goodness. Please, don't drink and drive. If you've been drinking, see if you can get a taxi or minibus home. See if you can get someone else to drive your car, who has a license, of course. Arrange when you're going out that if you want to have a couple beers or something, take someone who will drive, who doesn't drink, as they do abroad. They have what is called designated drivers. Please, every life lost on the road and every person injured on the road, because many people are injured and are never the same again. Please, don't drink and drive. Stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend and a coming week. And we'll meet again right here on Thursday, 12:30, with matters of public importance. Ta-ta. Bye-bye.